Hello there everyone, it's Michelle here. Welcome to another Health Coach Skills tutorial. Today we're going to talk all about how to brainstorm with your health coaching clients. So if you're interested in that topic, just bear with me. I'm just going to get this sharing over into our Facebook group and then we'll get going. All right, so I see the video there. Just going to share this to the group. Yeah. So this is a great topic. This actually came up in our Facebook group. Why can't I see the video there? Hang on one sec. Facebook's been being a little weird today. And okay, there we go. Yeah, so this topic came up in our Facebook group when I asked about different ideas that folks might like to hear about. So this was the second. Last week we did suggestions, and now today we're going to talk about brainstorming. So let me share this to the group. Wonderful. And post. Awesome. All right. Great. So welcome everyone. It's Michelle McLean here, and today we're going to talk all about how to brainstorm with your health coaching clients. So I've got 5 steps for you today. This is a really great tool to have in your toolkit as a health coach, the ability to help your clients brainstorm. And really the point here is that usually we use brainstorming when our clients are stuck in some way, when they can't kind of, envision the future, their future state, don't have a vision for what is possible for them, when they're stuck around action steps, maybe they're just not creative, right? So there are lots of different ways and places within the coaching session and the coaching process that we can use brainstorming, but it is just a really great tool for you to have in your toolkit to help your client move beyond, kind of just the default mode and the typical ways of doing things. So I do have 5 steps for you today on how to do brainstorming with your health coaching clients. But first, I just want to talk a little bit more about brainstorming and sort of the point behind it, because I always like to, get in there. What's the point of brainstorming? What do we really want to get at? What's the essence and the spirit of it, right? And that's really what we want to bring forth as coaches. So, like I said, it's a really great tool for helping our clients move from being stuck, right? Whatever place that they're stuck in. It could be where they currently are. They could be stuck in ambivalence, right? And they could really like where they are, so they don't really see the benefits of moving forward. They can't see any possibilities. It could also be used when your client's ready to take action, but again, maybe they're not being very creative in terms of what are all the possibilities, what are all the perspectives that they could bring to that specific action plan or goal. So brainstorming's really all at its essence about evoking hope for your client, right? It's about possibility thinking that we talk a lot about in coaching. What's possible for them? What are some new perspectives that you can bring to this? And it can really help your client strengthen their confidence in themselves, right? When they start to come up with all these new ideas and perspectives, they're going to become confident that, yeah, I can do this. I do have some new ways of thinking about whatever this challenge or obstacle is. So it's a great tool to help our client move from that sustained talk. So that's, from motivational interviewing, when our client is wanting to sustain where they currently are because they really like that current state, to move them from that sustained talk into change talk, which is all about the possibilities, and have them start thinking about what's possible if they could change. So those possibilities of changing, that's where we want to move our client to. And brainstorming is just one tool that we can use to help them do that. So, like I said, really helping your client open up to new perspectives, new possibilities, new ideas for moving forward, options, steps, action plans. And it's really about helping them get out of those ruts that they might be stuck in and helping them get creative about the possible solutions and options, right? So when we start brainstorming, I just want to say that in the beginning, it's not very practical, right? We get to the practical later, but at first we really want to help our client come up with interesting ideas, new directions. We want to help them chart that new territory and new places for them to explore. So we want to open up these new pathways of thinking for your client. So We want to help them be silly, outrageous, ridiculous, funny. Think about what is impossible, maybe, right? These are all going to help your client, because when we can start thinking about those ridiculous things, those silly things, maybe there's a little spark there, right? A little nugget, a little seed that really can inspire your client to make a shift, in a new direction. And that's what coaching's all about, right? It's that generative process where we're helping our client move forward. So brainstorming can really help our client do that, because we're sort of, being propelled then into new territory, right? These uncharted waters that maybe your client hasn't sort of dared to go before. So we've got these new perspectives, we've got some new possibilities, and then we can help our client work through some action steps and plans to put those into place. So in the brainstorming phase, we're definitely wanting to be sort of like blue skying this big picture thinking, getting out of those typical sort of ways of thinking for your client, right? So we do that big picture first, and then of course we're going to help them narrow down and focus in on an action plan based on the brainstorming. So when we're in the brainstorming phase, we really want to remove all the limitations, the constraints, the boundaries that your client might feel stuck in, right? So we could ask questions like, if you could wave a magic wand, that's a great brainstorming question to get your client thinking about all the possibilities. If money were no object, what would you do, right? In your wildest dreams, what would be possible? If you had all the time in the world, right? Removing that time constraint. Or if a miracle happened, what would you do? So those are some great questions that can start getting your client thinking those new possibilities, those new perspectives. So let's talk a little bit just about, when to use brainstorming, and really there's no right or wrong here. Brainstorming can be used in lots of different times throughout your coaching session or the coaching process. Really, again, whenever you feel your client is feeling stuck, they're not feeling creative, they don't have any ideas, that's a great time to use the brainstorming. So now I want to share with you my 5 sort of steps, 5 tips for brainstorming, how to do this in a coach-like way to really get your client, through that place where they're stuck. So the first step or tip that I have for you is, number 1, we always want to be asking the client first, right? What do they know? What are their ideas? So we don't want to just jump in and brainstorm all of our ideas for the client. We really want to go to them first, right? And this is just such a basic coaching principle. We always want to be checking in with our client first. What are their ideas? What do they know about the topic? What would they like to do? So that's where we start. We're coming from that place of always checking in with the client first. Then the second step is we're actually going to generate a list of ideas or topics or whatever it is you're brainstorming around, and we're going to write it down. So we're coaching our client. We're probably going to take those notes. Maybe your client's taking notes as well, but you want to make sure that you're getting down all of those ideas. So within that generating of the list, I have a few tips for you on sort of how you actually do the brainstorming, getting that list. So you could set a time limit. So you could say, okay, we're going to take 5 minutes, we're going to brainstorm all the ideas, or 10 minutes, whatever the case is. You may even want to take the whole session, dedicated to brainstorming. Maybe if you're doing 30-minute sessions, you might spend the whole session on it. So it really depends on you, the client, the nature of the topic, how big it is or how specific it is. So you could do that if it feels right. Then you want to be really clear on what you're brainstorming about, right? You want to narrow the topic. You don't want to just be, okay, let's talk about all the different diets that are possible. Although I guess that could be one. But, maybe you could think of, okay, what are all the different ways that you could reduce stress? That might be a brainstorming topic. Or what are all the ideas that you have to cope with your emotions that aren't food, right? That aren't using food. So other ways to cope with emotions, right? Let's come up with a list of that. Sometimes you might also want to say to your client, I'm just going to share a statement, and then you're going to sort of fill in the blanks. So it could be, I'm going to say a statement, and then you're going to come up with as many ideas as possible, to finish off that statement. So, I would want to exercise if, and then you just let the client go. If all of these things are in place, I'd want to exercise. So using a question like that and introducing sort of the brainstorming with, here's a statement, now you just fill in all the blanks, is a great way to start kicking off that brainstorming session. So then you want to jot down all the ideas, get all the ideas on the list without judgment or critique. You as the coach are not judging or critiquing the client, and you're really opening up for the client to just, be wild and crazy with all their ideas. Like I said before, be ridiculous, be silly, come up with things that might be impossible. Just think of any other perspectives, crazy ideas, impossible things that could be a solution to this or an idea, right? They can be unrealistic. They can be unlikely, impossible, silly. Use all of those words to really let your client know that anything is fair game here, right? Just wanting to generate all those different ideas, no matter how silly or unrealistic they are. So also during this brainstorming phase, when you're, generating that list of ideas, you want to ask a lot of what else questions, right? So we really kind of want to be riffing here with the client. So your client says a couple of ideas, you pause, you let them think, okay, and what else? Right? Is there anything else here? Is there something more? So just keep asking what else? What else? Is there more? Is there anything else? Until your client is really, truly exhausted the list, right? Because you want to make sure that they've thought of everything possible. And the other thing within this that I just sort of touched on was you want to use silence and pauses here, right? You as the coach do not want to be jumping in and interrupting and adding on. You're just continuing to ask them what else, what more, what else is possible until they're done with their list. So making sure to have that pause at the end and really just let them go. Even if you think there's nothing else, take that pause and really let them think. So the other thing that I want to say sort of in this step 2, when we're actually brainstorming the ideas, is that if your client is stuck and they can't get started to begin with, you could offer to sort of do a back and forth, right? If your client is someone who isn't creative, who, really isn't good at this kind of thing, maybe you will have to jump in with them. So a back and forth would be the client offers an idea, then you offer an idea. Then you go back and forth like that until, again, all the ideas are coming out. You've gone through all the possibilities. So usually, if you've set it up right and you're really holding space for your client and you really encourage them to brainstorm and be wild and silly, usually once you get started, it really does flow, right? Once the client gets into it, things really start to flow. So the third step then, once you've brainstormed all the ideas, once the client has really exhausted the list, then if you feel it's necessary to chime in with any additional options, you can always ask permission to do that, right? Saying something like, do I have your permission to add a couple of other ideas into the mix? Do I have your permission to share an idea? Have you ever considered this? May I offer another perspective? Maybe it's also something that the client has talked about before, and so you're saying something like, I remember you talked about this, or this, or X, Y, or Z. Are those still possibilities here, right? So you're bringing in what you already know about the client to add to that list. So you've really added in anything that you feel is necessary to add to that list of possibilities. And then the fourth step is that you're going to start to hone down the list, right? You've got this big list of all the possibilities. Then you want to ask the client, what ideas on this list seem the most promising? or most acceptable and why, right? So let's hone this down a little bit. Let's sort of cross off the things that aren't possible. Let's start to pare down the list into something that's more manageable, right? So then from the remaining list of all the good ideas, you can start to again hone that a little bit by asking the client questions, things like, so what are the top 3 ideas that are coming up for you around this list? What's the first thing from this list that you'd like to try? What's the first action step from this list? From this list, what resonates the most with you? What are you ready to do? What are you willing to do? So by that way, you're getting the client to hone in a little bit more on what's really resonating for them from this list. So you're honing it down. That's the 4th step to get to the real nuggets, those sparks, those little seeds that the client might want to start to pursue. And then the 5th step, you'll really then work through that action planning phase where you're helping the client come up with a smart action plan based on, those couple of ideas that they've honed in on. So getting to that action planning phase and helping your client come up with that action plan doesn't have to happen right then and there in the session. Of course, this all depends on how much time you have for the session. If you're doing 30-minute sessions, maybe the brainstorming's all you have time for, and then you're going to come back to the action planning next session. Maybe you want the client really needs some time to go away and think about this list, right? All of these new possibilities, and give it some thought before they come back and are ready to jump into action. So you're just gauging with the client at that point in terms of what makes sense. So those are the 5 steps. Let's just recap them in terms of how to brainstorm. Number 1, always ask the client first what their ideas are, what they know about the topic. The 2nd step is to generate that list and do the actual brainstorming and write it all down. The 3rd step is, if you feel it's necessary, once the client has exhausted their list, to add in any suggestions, you could ask permission to do that. The 4th step would be to hone the list down into, some manageable pieces, the things that resonate the most, the top 3, those kinds of things. So we're honing the list down. And then the 5th step is to take whatever that idea is and to build out the action plan. So I hope that's been helpful for you today. If you have any questions about any of these steps in the process or how to brainstorm with your health coaching clients, I'd be happy to answer them in the comments. The other thing that I wanted to just share is that if you're not already part of my Facebook community, I'd love to have you come over and join us there. The Facebook group is called Coaching Skills for Health Coaches, and again, would love to have you over there. So have a great day. We'll see you next time. Thanks for tuning in. Bye for now.